First of all, Waitakere Rangers, in the person of Greek and Saffron, with Banner.
Someone needs to talk to John.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, councillors. Saffron Toms and I will double team this. We're here on behalf of the Waitakere Rangers Local Board. This particular issue, the block offer, is one that's very important to our board. All of us would have been here, but we have a workshop scheduled right now, and Saffron and I were given leave to come and talk to this. It's of major importance to our board because, as you'll be aware, the Waitakere Rangers Local Board area is deeply affected by any proposal for drilling. We have much of the west coast adjacent to our board, and also part of the Manukau Harbour, and any sort of disaster that may occur would have significant implications for us. We've prepared a very short series of PowerPoints, and we've filed written submissions which are part of your agenda. The points that we wish to raise very briefly today are threats posed by oil drilling to west coast pristine environment, the threat to habitat of Mauis Dolphin and other protected marine mammals, and climate change and the need to keep oil in the ground, and we'll offer some brief comments as a conclusion. In terms of the threats from an oil spill, this is a photograph of the Deep Horizon explosion in the Gulf of Mexico that occurred not so long ago. And you may be aware that that one incident caused 16 deaths, and as well as the pollution of a large area of the American coast. And it's regarded as the largest environmental disaster the US has ever experienced. And when you look at that photograph, I would ask you to note that there are 6 tugs there fighting that particular fire. This next photograph I'm going to show you is one of New Zealand's boats that we have available in case of disaster. It's the Kuaka, which is currently hosted at Te Aratu. It's one of 3 boats in the country that Maritime New Zealand own, specifically designed to deal with oil spills. And when you look at that boat, your confidence that we could handle a major oil spill is probably shaken.
It's actually a ferry, isn't it?
The particular issues that are posed by a large oil spill off the west coast, that much of the area is regional park. There's limited access to the coast. We have some of the highest cliffs in the Auckland region. It's a high energy coastline. The sea there is very strong. And there's, we believe, a limited ability to deal with an oil spill. There are boats in the world that perhaps could handle a major oil spill, but it would take months for them to get down to New Zealand. And in the meantime, the devastation that would be caused would be tremendous. I appreciate that this is a very outside chance that this may or may not happen, but it is reason for us to be careful. The next part will be handled by Saffron.
Kia ora tātou. Thank you, Your Worship, the Mayor, for listening. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, members of the public, for your concern and interest. So I'm just going to briefly talk about the threat to the Mauis Dolphin, but it's not just about Mauis Dolphin. Mauis Dolphin is an iconic species. Many of us know a lot about it already, so I'm not going to go into much detail on that. We have in our Auckland area 22 species of cetaceans in Auckland. Cetaceans are whales, dolphins or porpoises, and that is almost a third of the world's species. So we're definitely a biodiversity hotspot in terms of our oceans. We also have pinnipeds, including seals, and many of these animals are protected under the Marine Mammals Protection Act in 1979. And to bring a bit more of a local and current perspective, the Manukau Harbour Forum reconstituted itself due to the change in the Local Government Act this year, and we also looked at the terms of reference again, and high on the list of issues that we can address are the health of the harbour and the protection of species such as Mauis and other marine species. So that forum has a membership of 9 local boards out of 21 of the Auckland region. So all of the 9 boards that border on the Manukau Harbour have signed up to that and have a very keen interest in the Manukau Harbour's health. Just wanted to quickly talk about some of the species that are there. Include some of the species that frequent our coast are xiphids or beaked whales. These are cryptic, unpredictable creatures, and they're likely low in numbers. We don't know much about them, and that's the same is true of many other creatures as well. We also have toothed whales, including sperm whales. Their dives may last about 35 minutes, and they can go as deep as 1,000 metres, but more commonly around 400 metres. A sperm whale's clicking vocalisation used for echolocation and communication may be as loud as 230 decibels, which is the same frequency as a seismic survey. So using the seismic surveying, obviously that's the step before you'd be doing your exploratory drilling. That in itself is very confusing to the creatures. At very close proximity, seismic surveying can cause death. A little bit further out, physical injury, and further out than that, behavioural changes. This has been well documented. Sorry, next slide. Death, injury, stress, avoidance of their common migration routes, which will obviously have impacts on feeding, fisheries, behaviours, who they might run into in terms of gene pool and things like that, and other behavioural changes which we don't understand, which would relate to feeding, breeding and nursing. Adding to that, the capacity to assess the presence of marine mammals on surveying vessels is limited to observers' sightlines of up to 1.5 kilometres, or passive acoustic monitoring, which has a 300 metre limit. And if a species is delayed, one of the special species that's been identified, startup will be delayed at the source or shut down if an observer detects a cetacean with a calf within 1.5 kilometres of the source, a species of concern within 1 kilometre of the source, or any marine mammal within 200 metres of the source. And as you can appreciate, those are quite close, and in terms of our limited information about the impacts to these creatures, it's a high risk that's not worth it. Next one. This is just a snapshot of the data that's been provided to DOC by observers on exploration vessels. As you can see, that there's lots of green dots. Those are dolphins. They don't break down which kinds of dolphins, but there's a strong argument that dusky dolphins and common dolphins should also be included in protections, and they are, I believe, protected under the Marine Mammals Act. And as you can see, obviously these animals move from, vast distances, so anything that happens outside of our particular coast to these creatures will obviously affect whether or not they're in our space in the end, so they actually have an effect on our local biodiversity as well. And I just wanted to repeat, these are only sightings from the seismic vessels themselves, and just wanted to point out as well that, that there have been sightings within not only open block offer areas, plenty of those, but there also have been many sightings within petroleum permit zones. Next one. It's a major priority for our local board to raise awareness about the health and well-being of the creatures on our coast, and one of the things that we have done is we actually have a Mauis Dolphin line, and that's our wonderful flag there. Don't want to just bring it down to the Mauis Dolphin, but that's just an illustration of the commitment that we have, and that has been really well received within our communities as well. I'll pass it back to Greg. Oh wait, one more. Sorry, that's for the end. Okay, this one, yeah.
Okay, just a couple of comments about the need to keep the oil in the ground. And my personal belief is that the science is very well settled, and the situation is that urgent that all elected representatives, no matter what level they occupy, ought to talk strongly about this issue and try and persuade the forces that be that action needs to be taken now. The IPCC has clearly concluded that to prevent irreparable environmental disaster, emissions need to be capped so that average temperatures increase no more than 2 degrees Celsius from pre-industrial ages. And that is an extraordinarily strong scientific consensus that has been reached by scientists throughout the world. A recent study by McGlade and Edkins, who are lecturers at the London Institute for Sustainable Resources, their conclusion was that of currently discovered global oil reserves, they're a third greater than the amount that can be safely burned. So the oil that we know we have now, we can only burn 2/3 of it. Otherwise we face the runaway global warming which the IPCC has warned against. And this is a somewhat less scientific but more colourful description of our current position. It's by Bill McKibben, who's the co-founder of 350.org. And he said, one lesson of this work is unmistakably obvious. When you're in a hole, stop digging. These numbers show that unconventional and extreme fossil fuel, Canada's tar sands for instance, simply have to stay in the ground. Given these numbers, it makes literally no sense for the industry to go hunting for more fossil fuel. We have binged to the edge of our own destruction. The last thing we need now is to find a few more liquor stores to loot.
So, in conclusion, we ask you not to risk the catastrophe that an oil spill would create, and by not issuing exploration permits. We urge Council to oppose the allocation of petroleum exploration permits in the West Coast area as a whole. And this is based on climate change and emissions. This is all in the name of clean coasts for our people and our animals to enjoy into the future. Protection of seabirds, such as the endangered fairy tern, the dotterel, blue penguin, and many, many others. Protection of marine mammals, already sensitive fisheries, and other endangered sea creatures. And for a genuinely healthy and resilient future for our communities, for current and future generations.
Thank you. Thank you very much, team.
One more, sorry. Where's the...
Oh. Sorry, there you go. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Right, questions, councillors? Councillor Wayne?
Just one question. Can you put up that slide that showed the sightings of marine mammals and the overlap with the block areas? That's the one. So just to clarify, the colours there indicate the block offer areas, and there are obviously significant sightings of marine mammals within those areas. That's correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And it doesn't include, sorry, our CMA, obviously, because that activity is not happening there, so the observers aren't capable of observing what's actually happening in our CMA.
Right. Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Penny.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and hi, Greg and Saffron. And this may be an unfair question, but Greg and I were colleagues along with Linda a long time ago. The thorny issue that this council faces is the fact that we don't hand out the permits or not hand out the permits for oil drilling. So we're in the very difficult position of trying to talk to the government about, if these permits are granted, how we want to protect exactly the issues that you're raising. So, and please, Mr. Mayor and Saffron, you don't need to answer this if it feels too hard, because it's a tough one. What some of us are wrestling with is, some of us around the table are very comfortable to make a clear statement to government that we would like to see oil and gas exploration off the fragile coasts, particularly the West Coast, not happen. End of story, full stop. However, we are not the holders of that decision-making pen. So should these be granted, we as a council want to make these issues that have been raised by Greg and Saffron so clearly. We want to make that via submission well known to government. If you are going to go ahead, our silence is not taken as do or not do. We want to make damn sure that these issues are raised. So for some of us who are very happy to say, please don't do it, full stop. But if you're going to do it, this is our submission on how we want it to happen. Do you understand the need for us to make the points that you have raised so clearly in a submission.